Alright guys, so as you can see, I'm currently laying in bed. I feel like hell, but I promised a rune guide video, and not just like a this is how you build this monster kind of deal, but like a what runes to try to farm out and what runes to keep when doing so. So I guess that's what we're gonna be talking about today. Oh, my face looks weirdly long. Ah, Lizard. I'm sorry. You've got so many more heartbreaks to go, buddy. Ted and Robin breaking up is not the most of your concerns. But, anyways, I do have a little tidbit to share with you guys later. I'll probably post it when I'm not feeling like hell. Uh, this dude right here, literally every single one of his monsters Bioproc 4 times. That's 5 out of the 6, by the way, because Kamoon wasn't on violent. His Theo left a motion trail the moment I started the battle against him. I DC'd from chat immediately. There was a lot of screen tearing that suddenly started to happen, so I don't know if there's a possible way to hack, but I'm pretty positive if there is, he's doing it. But I'll share that video with you guys later. You can take a look at it and decide for yourselves. Maybe I'm just bad. Who knows? No, I've got food poisoning, dude. And I was throwing up earlier. I've still got a bunch of stuff in my sinuses. It's bad. Um, but anyways, moving on to these runes. We're just gonna go to the manager real quick to make it easier. So, here's the deal. Period. End of story. If it is in your 2 slot, your 4 slot, or your, I only have 5 fingers, but 6 slot, it should always be a percentage unless it's a speed main. Period. Like, anything else is a waste. Mathematically speaking, it doesn't make sense to run flat stat mains. No matter what those subs look like, just don't keep them. If they drop off something, sell them immediately. Now, another thing, at this point in the game, they have added 5-star runes to hell mode scenarios. What that means is you should not at all be keeping anything less than a 4-star rare grade or a 5-star flat or a 5-star vanilla rune from anything, no matter what level of the game you're at. At my point, I'm only keeping 5-star hero grade or 6-star runes for the most part. But that's just where I'm at. And that's where actually a lot of, I think, my viewers are sitting at as well. And they're probably sitting there like, yeah, okay, moving on. Now, neat little thing that I discovered. If you set attack percent subproperty, you'll notice there's something missing right here. There's no 3rd slot runes with an attack percent ever. They don't show up. So don't get too hell-bent on that at any given point in time. I think defense percent, the 1st slot, just doesn't happen. It can't. And then I want to say no, HP percents show up everywhere. I can't think of a stat that doesn't show up in the 5 slot, but your 1st won't have a defense and your 3rd will never have an attack. Period. I don't know why. It's just how it is. Now obviously your 2 slot, you're only going to have a certain number of options there. You've got your HP runes, your speed runes, your attack, and your defense somewhere, possibly. I don't know if I have any defense mains here at all. I do, they're like way down the line. There's one. And defense runes. Those are your only real 4 that you're going to end up in your 2-slot period. It's just all that's going to happen. 4-slot is going to be your crit rate, crit damage, HP, and defense, I think, are the only options. And then obviously you've got flats as well, but those are going to be sold. Now, your attack 4th slots, the only reason you're ever going to need them is for things like Hwahi or a bomber. Something that literally does something that scales off of their attack power. I think Annabelle would go into that heading as well. Just because crit damage is so much better in every aspect. So if you can get it, ideally, for most monsters that are going to be doing damage, that's what you're going to want. If it's not doing damage, obviously your defense or your HP is going to be what you're looking for, but you know what I'm saying. Your 6th slot, you're going to have attack, defense, HP, and accuracy and resist, I think, are your options. I try not to keep any accuracy or resistance main stats because I can pull them from the subs. Like, it feels like a waste of a main stat for something that can be capped out. I also don't like running crit rate 4th slots for the same reason. Except for things like Vertihile that just need it sometimes. My Verde doesn't have it, but obviously if you're building an early game Vertihile, you need that crit rate 4th slot. And that's fine. But ideally, you can get that crit rate from your substats and run a crit damage there, and then he's just hitting harder. Which is kind of what you're trying to work towards. So anyways, that's kind of the basic stuff. But that's not what he wanted to, or what my buddy wanted to know. So what we're going to talk about now is what runes you should be keeping in what sets. So we'll start with energy, just because we can go down the list. With energy, you're obviously not going to want too much attack power. Certain mons do need it, so like this has a 23% attack substat, but I don't have too many with a lot of attack power to them. It's, as you'll notice, mostly going to be your defense, your HP, your accuracy, your resistance, those support-based substats. And then obviously speed is a big thing no matter what rune set you're looking at. You're going to always want to be looking for those speed substats. Period. That's never really going to change. But again, like that accuracy right there, or where's another decent example? Speed mains are always good. You kind of get the point there. Energy is an easy one. Moving on to guard, you're going to see a similar setup, except with some of the defense-based monsters, their damage is going to be defense-based, so you're going to want to start looking for things like crit rate and crit damage, though. I'm sorry, Ku, I don't mean to be boring you. My voice is kind of monotone right now because I'm sick as all hell. Anyway, so with guard runes, you're going to start looking for a little more crit rate, crit damage than energy. But at the same time, you can use them in place to give your monsters that added defense that they need, like certain raid monsters especially. Swift. Swift is an easy one. Doesn't matter what anything else is, if it doesn't have a speed stat, sell it. Period. Like, everything else can be great on it, but if it doesn't have a speed sub, it's not going to do what a rune with a speed sub could be doing for you. Swift runes are meant to make your monster fast, so why would you avoid making your monster faster? Seems like base logic to me. How's it going, Gavin? Obviously, there are certain substats you're going to want to tailor to for individual monsters. Oftentimes, you're going to want to find accuracy because these or these faster monsters need to land their stuff as well. Otherwise, it doesn't matter that they took the first turn. But like Chloe, it really doesn't matter what you have on her because the entire point is to make her go first and then to let them go after that. You see what I mean? Now, moving into Blade. Blade, the set bonus in of itself is crit rate, but you always want crit rate on your Blade runes if you can help it. Now, it's not quite as important as like speed on a Swift rune, so I wouldn't just sell something because it doesn't have crit rate, but I would definitely be on the lookout for those crit rate subs. Um, Obviously, speed mains are always good, but defense mains in crit rate just aren't as important. Oh, that's the worst. Um, if you've got a fourth slot, attack percent. Like this rune, I should have sold it, but the speed main was too good not to, or not to keep it, and it worked out for my Hwahi here. But every other fourth slot rune you'll see is a crit damage. Because if you're upping crit rate, you should be doing crit damage. Period. Like if it doesn't need crit rate, it probably doesn't need crit damage. If it doesn't need crit damage, it probably doesn't need crit rate. Anyway, HP, you're not gonna see too many of those from me, anyways. I've seen some people that'll run crit rate with HP monsters like Escher. Um, Meh, it's all right, but I wouldn't keep them if I were you personally. It just doesn't make any sense. And defense is the same way. Like, if you have a monster that needs crit rate and also the stat, go ahead and keep it. But otherwise, that mana could be going into another better rune. Rage. Rage is similar to crit rate, or similar to Blade in that you need your crit rate, and if it's a fourth slot, you need your crit damage. Like, this rune is not on anyone. You pulled the Water Pally? That chick is broke. Straight up. But anyway, your crit rate, your crit damage are going to be ideally what you're looking for here. But Rage is just crit damage based. So if your monster does damage based on something other than its attack power, look for those stats. Like, we'll go back to Escher because he's the only thing I can think about right now for some reason. Um, Obviously, if you're running a Rage Escher, your Rage runes need to have the HP on them. It's just how it is. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting your runes. But on Elysia or Ethna, you have to have that crit damage, you have to have that crit rate. And obviously speed, again, always a good thing to look for. But first and foremost, be searching for those crit rate subs. Because without crit rate, damage doesn't matter. Focus. Kind of similar to any of the other offset sub-properties. With focus being as it's an accuracy increase, you kind of want to look for those accuracy subs to make sure you're really capitalizing on that anytime you throw it on something. But other than that, it really doesn't matter what the main properties are. Obviously, your speed mains are going to matter, your crit damage versus attack, your HP and defense are going to be widely used. I think more than anything, actually, you're going to want to look for those tank-based focus runes and the speed mains. Wow, that's not on anything. Oh, wow. Because the substats are garbage. Endure runes, I personally obviously don't use too much, as you can see by this non-existent storage. Um, just because I don't pull many good ones, and the added resistance just isn't that important to me. Um, I can pretty much pull resistance from my substats, as you can see from my Soha here, at 70% resist without Endure runes. That's enough. That's fine. Like, obviously, chasing you maybe want to have 100% resist on just to be funny, but do you really need it? I wouldn't really worry too much about getting resistance subs in your endurance. I would focus on those speed, which is obviously why these two runes are on my spectra. Your speed, your HP, anything that makes a monster tankier is going to be what you're looking for in your substats. That's about it. Tankier and faster. Fatal. Fatal's fairly close to Rage in that you want to build your crit rate, your crit damage, and your speed more than anything. But on top of that, it gives an attack bonus instead of a crit damage. How do you rune Galleon? My personal suggestion is Swift Blade at your level, or Swift Focus, depending on your substats. But again, your crit rate, your crit damage, your attack power, and your speed are going to be what you're looking for. Now, unlike Rage, you're not going to have those other monsters that do damage based on something other than their attack power, because if that were the case, you would not be running Fatal on them. So if you drop a rune with, say, no crit rate, no crit damage, no speed, and no attack power anywhere, you might want to think about selling it. Despair runes. Despair runes are a little wonky, because there's a lot of mons that can use them, and not many monsters that do use them, if that makes any sense. Like, theoretically, you can put any rune set on anything, especially when they're 4 sets like this, where they're kind of universal. Anything that does damage can proc a stun. Period. But in many cases, it makes more sense to run something else. Don't get me wrong, I love my Despair runes, but like 22% attack power, what am I going to use that for? Or like this rune, I would love to find something to put these two runes on. Or let me see. Yeah, and then there's this crit damage 4th slot. Like, I have decent Despair runes. I don't have any Despair-based nukes. Like, this is ridiculous. I mean, I tried a Despair Illusion at one point. Just didn't work very well, to be honest with you. The Fatal or the Rage just works too much better. But, like, there's 20% crit damage. There's a maxed out crit damage stat. I've got either a speed or an attack percent with another 20% crit damage. So that alone, just those 3 runes, is 120% added crit damage. And then we've got the 22% attack power in the first slot. That's an insane combo of runes with a lot of damage. But what do I do with it? You know? On the other hand, speed, accuracy, and your HP defense, those runes you're going to find a lot of uses for. Like, Beretta can always use more tankiness and more accuracy. Brian, Basalt, Shannon, if you go back and watch my Giants B10 video, you'll see my Shannon is or was tanked out on Despair Focus, which is going to be oftentimes your best combo. But Despair runes, kind of be careful with them, because you'll end up selling runes that you'll need later, or you'll end up not selling runes that are just going to sit there forever because they're so different. Like, don't get me wrong, Despair runes help a lot, especially in dungeons, but you kind of gotta pick and choose what you're going to use. Now, Vamp. Vamp, I would have back in the day told you if you're not running attack, crit damage, attack with speed subs and crit rate subs, you're doing it wrong, but I was wrong. Fact of the matter is a lot of times later in the game, your Vamp builds are going to be your things that are meant to sustain in raid. Just kind of how it is. So like my Shaolin, my Hua, I now have my Cowgirl on it. It was just a give it a try during free rune removal. I'm going to take them off her. But as far as your substats go, like, you kind of need a little bit of everything, because if your monster gets one shot, your Vamp runes don't matter. It's just how it is. If your monster gets stunned into the ground, your Vamp runes don't matter. If your monster can't land a crit, your Vamp runes don't matter. And if your crit doesn't hurt enough, you're not going to Vamp enough for it to matter. So when looking at Vamp runes, kind of think like you're building a Perna, to be honest with you. You need crit rate, you need accuracy, you need speed, you need defense, you need HP. You need everything. So ideally, when looking at a Vamp rune, if it's not hero grade plus, you're gonna struggle later on. Obviously, you don't want a crit rate main. You don't want a resistance or an accuracy main. Period. Sell those runes, please. But crit damage 4th slot, because you need the extra damage for the Vamp to work. 2 slots should either be whatever you're doing your damage off of, or a speed. And your 6th slot should either be whatever you're doing your damage off of, be it attack or whatever, or defense or HP if that's what you're lacking in your substats. But it should be one of those 3 main bases. Like, this is where your focus is going to be for most of your runes. Your crit damage and higher. Your resistance, your accuracy, while they do help and they are necessary, you don't necessarily need to have 100% of either of them. Violent runes, violent runes, violent runes, violent runes. Everyone needs so many of these things because they go on everyone. But what ones are better than others? Obviously, violent speed mains are amazing. If you drop one, keep it. Period. Doesn't matter what the subs are. Keep it. For your 4th slot, you're going to be looking at like crit damage, defense, and HP. Try to stay away from the crit rate mains unless you're putting it on Vertihile. And then 6th slot, try to stay away from accuracy and resist, just because your defense, attack, and HP are going to be so much more important. These runes are going to go on anyone you want to take more turns than everyone else. That's the best way I can put it. Speed subs are going to be ideal, because again, you want to take more turns, meaning you want them to be faster as well. Barring speed subs, like, everything matters because they go on every one. And I don't really know what more to say on Violent Runes specifically. Like, obviously don't keep flat stats. I don't know. Nemesis. For the love of God, will you people stop keeping defense main Nemesis runes? They don't work. They're literally an oxymoron. Read what that says. Attack dodge increases by 4% for every 7% of HP lost. If you deafen the amount of damage you're taking by adding defense, you're lowering the rate at which your attack dodge can increase. Focus on those HP subs. HP and resistance and speed are going to be most of what you're looking for in Nemesis runes. Now, I don't necessarily recommend them 100%, especially not to early game players. They're a difficult rune set to work with. But if you can do it, focus those HP and resistance and speed subs. Those are going to be basically all you're looking for. Again, try to stay away from flat stats. Try to look for a speed main most of the time. But being high HP is all you really need in Nemesis more than anything. Will runes. Honestly, if it doesn't have a speed sub, I sell it. To be frank, it's like Swift. The point of will runes is to make sure your team doesn't get wiped before you can take a turn or stun locked before you can take a turn. So if you can just take a turn before them, that's going to be ideal. Will runes are a safety net. That's it. That's all they are. And if you can't get the subs from them, don't use them. Like, if you can go Will and get 20% crit rate, or go Blade and get 50% crit rate, go with Blade. It's a baseline. Like, your monsters need their stats. Will runes aren't that amazing. Like, they're great, don't get me wrong, but they're not that amazing. You need your sets, or your monsters to actually work, period. Shield runes. Okay. So, similar to Nemesis, defense doesn't matter. Shield is based on 15% of your max HP. Look for HP subs. And again, like will runes, you need that speed because it's a safety net more than anything. That's about all I have to say on those. Revenge runes, you're looking for basically your same subs as your vamp or your violent, because if your monster doesn't sustain a hit, you're not going to revenge proc. That's all it is. Baseline. And if they do sustain a hit, you're not always going to get that revenge slot. But it's for monsters that their auto attack matters a lot. So, like, your Freets. Excuse me. That revenge dot is great. Period. Like, they need to do something with their auto attack, or you just shouldn't be running revenge on them. Violence fine, but not worth it on revenge. Most Ifrits, you can run violent revenge on them because you want them to take way more turns, and you want them to do something with those turns. Now, if revenge was on, say, Mav, not worth it. But violence worth it on him. Revenge stun doesn't really matter all that much, because they've already taken their turn at that point. Destroy runes, I won't lie to you, I don't know what to do with these things. I know they're meant for really, really tanky as shit monsters, like a Wind Panda or whatever. But I just haven't gotten to use them too much, because most of my stuff just one-shots teams, and if it can't one-shot the team, it finds a way to do so. But against things like Perna or Rena, like decreasing their max HP slowly and out tanking them is a great strategy. So if you find a use for Destroy Runes, please drop a comment below and let me know what you're doing with them that makes them work so much better. Now, getting into these new rune sets, I won't say I recommend them too much, just because the offset runes, generally speaking, become necessary to get your subs. And if not, I'd rather run Will. But if you're doing something dungeon based and you're missing one of these subs, definitely something to look at just because they're adding that substat to everyone, not just that one specific monster. It's a team bonus. It's like having an extra leader skill, which is amazing. Especially in raid, because you've got, say, 6 monsters. If you run them all on, well, I don't know, fight. If you run 6 monsters on straight fight, that's 3 times 8 is 24 times 6 is 120, 148. It's 148% attack power on everyone just from set bonuses, which blows a fatal set out of the water. Now, obviously, you don't want to run 6 monsters on fight runes, but you see my point. Now, as far as the subs you should be looking for on these runes, I would suggest for fight, look at fatal runes. Very similar. Accuracy, look at focus. Tolerance, look at endure. Enhance, look at guard. And determination, look at energy. Just base your runes in these new runes off what they were similar to in the old ones. Now, if you're early game, don't touch these, please. Leave them in your storage. Don't sell them if you think they're good. But don't necessarily try to push yourself to use them either. I'm only using like 2 sets of them at the moment, and otherwise, don't really see too much going on with them. But we have literally 0 people watching this right now, so I'm going to sign off. I'll catch you guys later, but thanks for not watching. Drop a like and a sub if you're watching this in the future. And Corey, I hope that helped with what you were looking for. If not, any questions, drop in the comments below. And if anybody finds a use for Destroy Runes, you let me know. Catch you guys later.